what I want to talk to you about is what I've seen from working with lots of companies doing agile transformations, implementing product management, and what I think we can do to get better at it, and why should we even care? Who cares about product management, right? Why should we care about this? So my story in product management starts over 10 years ago. I went into a company, and at that time I was called a business analyst. How many people have been a business analyst before? Yeah, lots of people out there. And I didn't know what that meant. They just brought me in and they said, you're going to be working between technology and the business. And I said, that's great. That's kind of like where I want to sit, somewhere in the middle there. Had a technical background, did not want to code, but really liked business stuff too. So I was trying to get involved there. So they told me, this is your job. First day of work, I come in. They're like, your job is to create all these beautiful specification documents where you outline all the requirements for the product, write everything up, go into PowerPoint, mock up the screens so that, not PowerPoint, it was Photoshop, but go into the screens, mock it up, pixel perfect, and then ship those documents over to the developers. You go get that information from the sales team, they're over there, ask them what they want, put it in a doc, bring it to them. I was like, all right, sounds good. So I got to work making these specification documents. And they told me the more detailed, the better. And I got really good at that. I actually found out that I found one of these on my computer, one of the first ones I ever made, it was 21 pages long for a change password thing. And I got applauded at work for this. They were like, this is so detailed, this is amazing. And my boss was telling me I was awesome. So I was like, I got this thing down. This is what I was meant to do, be a business analyst, right? Be a product manager in this world. So I had thought I was awesome there. And when I left that company and went somewhere else, boy, did I have an awakening. So I left that company. It was actually Capital IQ, which is part of Standard & Poor's. And I went to a very small startup. I was like person number 30 in that startup. And my team that I was working with the developers, first of all, I was allowed to talk to them, which was pretty cool. Second of all, they were really awesome developers. Like, they built Doctrine, they did open source. They were like really, really into their craft. And it was the first time I met developers who were really like that. So I was brought in there by the CTO of Capital IQ who went there. And he said, okay, go do what you did here at this new place called Open Sky. I want you to make all the specification docs. I want you to ship them off to the engineers, right? Like, let's do it. So I got to work, did all my beautiful specs, shipped them off to my team, which was in Nashville, and I waited. And about 3 weeks later, I got something back, and I went, what is this? This isn't anything that I specified. Like, none of this was in the document. Did you even read that document? Like, I put everything in there. What is wrong with you? And all the guys' names were John. My entire team's name was John, so we had to call them by their last names. There's 3 of them. And they went, oh, that thing? I didn't read that. And I was like, why not? They were like, it's like 45 pages long. Do you think I have time for that? No. I was like, but this is my job. Like, you're not doing what my job is. And at this point, I started to go, I had like a crisis, right? I was like, if my job is not to make all these beautiful specification documents and they're not going to read them, like, what's my purpose in life? Like, who am I? What am I supposed to do? So at this time, one of the Johns on the team, actually this guy's name was Jared, so this wasn't a John, this was a Jared, but we still had 3 Johns. Jared says, hey, I wasn't just hired as a developer here, I was actually hired as an Agile coach too. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And he said, well, let's try something. It seems like we're having a lot of tensions. And I was like, you could say that. Nobody wanted to talk to each other. We were all in the standoff. I was like, build my things. And they were like, no, screw you. Go somewhere else. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. And Jared was like, let's try something called Scrum. And I said, all right, anything is better than this. Well, I'll give it a whirl. And we didn't have any like formal training, no 2-day anything. Jared just kind of came in the room and was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. First, we're going to talk to each other. 2, we're going to break down the work together. We're going to discuss what needs to happen. And we're going to put them into cards instead of specification documents and try to do this. So we started learning a little bit about Scrum, piece by piece. And one of the big things that I learned from him was like no specification documents, right? If we're going to go Agile, we're going to start working together. So we started doing these basics, right? And it wasn't easy at first. We had 8-hour-long planning meetings some days because we didn't know how to do this. We were just trying to work through it. But it started working, and we started getting really good at working together. And there was no more standoffs. Nobody was yelling at each other for specification documents. And we became one of the best teams in the company. We were the ones that were charged with the most challenging problems. Like, our CEO would come over to us and be like, I know you guys can handle this. There's some crazy stuff we have to put out there. Go for it. And we learned that we actually liked working with each other too, which was a big thing. So I got very excited about using Agile. I got really excited about doing this work together, and I liked working with my team. So as we're chugging along, shipping features, getting everything out there, one big project that lands on our table was something called dashboards for our users. So we were a two-sided e-commerce company. And what we had was curators who were celebrities, like chefs, like Michael Ruhlman and Bobby Flay, like all these people out there. They would pick out products that we would sell on the site. So this is back in the e-commerce days of Fab and all those flash sale sites that were going on. That's where we worked. So what those people were doing were running their businesses through us too. We would split the profits with them. They were making a lot of money off of partnering with us. So naturally they said, hey, we'd love some insight into what our business is doing. At the time, we didn't have any dashboards for them. We didn't have any way for them to track revenue. We didn't have any way for them to see what they were selling, what days they would go live. So we're doing it all manually. So our boss comes up to us and he's like, you guys are gonna go build these dashboards for people, this portal for them to log on and do all these things. It's like, great, we can handle that. So we get to work, go to the customers, ask them everything that they wanna see, put it in a backlog, start speccing out the things, start running the sprints to release stuff, releasing it, talking to the customer, showing them a prototype, being like, you like this? And they're like, yeah, sure, okay, cool. Go on, keep going. 3 months later, we launch it. And we're like, look, isn't it gorgeous? It's everything you need. All the dashboards, all the information you asked me for months, right? And we finally, this was the first time we ever actually started measuring our work too. So we put Google Analytics on it, which was fairly new at the time, and I started watching and waiting for people to log in and start using it. We sent out how to get there, all the information, all that stuff. So the first day, I get 5 people. Yes. Second day, I'm like 10. Perfect. And then all of a sudden, I get nobody. And it stayed nobody for a very long time. So I picked up the phone and I called them and I said, you guys have been asking for this forever. I don't understand. What's happening? And they go, oh, this stuff? What is all this stuff? You gave me all of these numbers that I don't really care about. I thought I wanted to know revenue. What I really wanted to know was profit, right? I only care about how much money I'm making, not how much money we're making here. I wanted to know, I said I wanted to know all the things that were trending. I don't really care about that. I just want to know what's next. I go in here, it's overwhelming. There's too many things. I can't access it quickly because I'm always on the go. You put it on desktop. And this is when I first started to think, oh my God, we've been shipping all of these features. We've been shipping all these things for years. And I never knew before if people were actually using them until this moment. And I started to realize that we were in what I now call the build trap. And the build trap is a scary place where companies get into this habit of shipping feature after feature, product after product, when we never actually go, is this the right thing to build, right? Or do people actually use this? Are they logging in, engaging with it? Do they really want this? Is it contributing value? And since those days, I've seen so many companies stuck in the build trap. So we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here, right? How did we all get into this habit of shipping feature after feature? So I fundamentally believe it starts with this. As companies, when we start building software, especially companies that were not traditionally based on software, so anybody going through an agile transformation, right? We started to think the more ideas, right, and the more specifications, the faster we can code that, the more money we'll make. Easy, right? Put more things in that specification folder, make it go faster with Agile, right? And we get profit. Boom, easy. But it's not that linear, right? So what do we do instead? We just keep adding and adding things to the backlog, but we never really take it away. right? We're like feature, 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 feature. But when was the last time you took something off a backlog? When was the last time you retired a feature or rolled it back down? It doesn't happen that often. So what happens to our products is they become a hodgepodge of complexity, right? So what started as a copier is now a printer and a scanner and a... Yeah. So, like, how many people have stood in front of this thing and been like, I have no idea how to use this, right? Every time I walk into somebody else's office, I'm like, nope, not worth it, and just walk away. I'll PDF it to them. I'm not going to play that game. So that's why this is still relevant, right, from 1999. So how did we get here, right? How did we get into this habit of shipping, and what really fed the beast as well? I think in part is how people misinterpret Agile. So I was at the Mind the Product conference, sitting next to Jeff Patton a couple years ago. And this is a conference full of 1,300 product managers, right? Like you finally get them all in a room. It's a lot of product managers. We're all talking about product-y things. And David Cancel gets up on stage. He's the CEO of Drift. It's a very high, fast growth company in Boston. And he gets up there and he goes, ugh, I hate Agile. I'm not even going to get into that. And everybody starts giggling. It's like, the whole audience, like 1,300 people are like getting into it. And he goes, okay, I actually will get into it. I hate Agile. Agile only cares about velocity and story points. Nobody cares about the user. And like 1,300 people stood up and clapped. And Jeff and I were like, ooh, I think we got a problem here. Like, this is not good, right? But it's true. Like, you hear people getting frustrated about Agile, and especially product managers and product owners in those positions, or people who come from a background of doing product in different places, right? So what happens when we start learning Agile? The thing we have to realize is that when we learn Agile, we usually learn Scrum, and Scrum doesn't have a brain. And that's why we get frustrated about this lack of focus on the user. So when we learn Scrum, or we teach people product management for the first time through Scrum, which is PO training, we're not really teaching them all the stuff that comes before that, right? Scrum is a framework, right? It's a framework and a process of how we work together, but it's not necessarily how we come up with the ideas of what to do. And we have to remember that. A lot of people buy Agile training, they buy Scrum, they implement these in these companies, thinking it's a panacea to solve all, and it's not. And that's where we get stuck. So when we take people and start to move them into a product owner role, we have to realize that a product owner is a role you play on a Scrum team. But a product manager is your job, it's your career. So the motions that you do, right, grooming the backlog, prioritizing, working with the teams, breaking down those sprints, that's just a framework. What if you took Scrum away? Are you no longer a product owner? Like, if you're no longer a product owner, what are you? You should be a product manager. You still need to figure out what is it that we're going to build. How do we get value with the team, right? How do we get value for our business? So it all goes back to value. And the way that I like to describe value is this. We have customers on one side, we've got businesses on the other side. And our customers have problems, wants, and needs. And the business is there to try to fulfill them. So our business ships products and services, delivers that to the customer to fulfill these problems, wants, and needs. But it's not really until they're fulfilled and they go away that a customer realizes value. So products and services are not inherently valuable in and of itself, right? It has to solve a problem. Otherwise, nobody will care. It's pointless. So once the customer gets value, that's how they give us business value in return, and that's how we make a nice mutual exchange. So it's the purpose of product management to figure out what are those products or services, right, that we should actually build there. Not just a product manager, but product management as a discipline. What are we trying to do to figure out what products or services we should put out there? So we need to remember that solving big problems for customers creates big value for businesses. That's why we're here at the end of the day. If we're not solving problems for customers, what are we doing, right? What's the value of our business? And sometimes it's really easy to get into habits of just shipping and looking at features and code and forgetting that we're actually solving problems, and that's why we're here. So in order to do that, we have to set up our organizations well to thrive with that product management. And there's 3 different areas that I like to look at to figure out how to holistically make that work top to bottom. So the first one's strategy. Do we have the right product strategy? Is our strategy well connected to the strategy of the company and how we want to grow and where we want to go? And what's the vision? The second piece is process. So what are we doing to uncover what are the right products and services? What are we doing to talk to our users and understand and experiment to learn? And then lastly is the organization of all that. So the organization part is about how do we structure our people around our products and services in our portfolios? How do we set up things like product operations to make sure that we can scale? So we need all three of these areas to really make a fully functioning product organization and a well-functioning product company. So first, we're going to talk about strategy. So strategy happens to be the biggest problem that I see in every single company. And it's not that the strategy doesn't exist, although I've been in a lot where there has not been one. But sometimes it's just not deployed well or people don't understand what it is. So let's talk about what good strategy really looks like. I was working with a company a few years ago that was a meal kit delivery service. Anybody use like HelloFresh here or anything like that? Yeah, so it was a competitor to them. So what they did is that you ordered this box of food online, ships all the ingredients pre-portioned to your door, gives you the recipe, and you can cook home-cooked meals really fast, things that are really good for you. It's great because it teaches people how to cook, but it also gives you like nice home-cooked meals. So when I came in there, they had a very clear target. They said, we really need to double acquisition. We're a growth stage company. You know, we're about 200 people, 250 people. We're scaling. We're trying to get to a nice exit, right? That's the point of what we're trying to do here. So came in, try to figure out how do we double acquisition. And we start diving in. We're trying to figure out why aren't people signing up? Is it our offering? Is it the website? You know, what's going on? So we're in a meeting with our team trying to figure out what's going on. And our CTO walks in and he sits down. Just crashes my meeting. And he goes, what's your product strategy? Just interrupts. What's your product strategy? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we don't know what problem we're solving yet. So we're trying to figure out what's causing this acquisition problem, what's causing this dip that we've seen. He goes, no. I want a document with every field you intend to put on the site and the content strategy so that I can build a back end. That's what your product strategy should be. I was like, that's not going to solve acquisition problems, right? That's not a strategy either, right? What he was asking for is a plan. He was asking for, tell me what you're going to build, give me all the solutions. And this happens in a lot of companies. Most product strategies that we see are wish lists full of features, right? They're just like, what's your product strategy? Well, we're going to build this and then that and then this and then that. And it goes really, really down. And then what we do is we take all of those features and then we shove them in a Gantt chart and then we make up dates for when they're going to come out. And then everybody's really surprised when we don't hit those dates. And you're like, you didn't even know if you were supposed to build this a month ago. Like, why are you surprised it's not out there? And this happens over and over and over again, right? And what we fail to realize when we do these patterns is that creating new products is just full of uncertainty. When you start out trying to build something or you're trying to figure out how to reach a goal, there's a huge level of uncertainty there. We've got our known knowns of what we know that we should build. We've got our known unknowns of things we need to discover. And then we've got our unknown unknowns of things that will come out of experimentation. And that's how we should really approach setting up strategies so that we can navigate the uncertainty. So product strategy is not a plan. It is not a plan. It is not do this, do that, do that. What it is a framework. And I think the best definition I have seen so far is this one from Stephen Bungay. So if you haven't read The Art of Action, it is a phenomenal book. I highly recommend you read it. And what Stephen Bungay says is that strategy is a deployable decision-making framework enabling action to achieve desired outcomes constrained by current capabilities and coherently aligned to the existing context. So what does that mean? It means it's a framework. So what we're doing here is just giving enough context and enough direction so that people can figure out what are the options of which way to go. And that's how we also build autonomous teams, right? That's how we get people to do that. So what does that look like in practice? So when we do strategy deployment with our companies, when we go in, we see that there's about 4 levels that I go into detail in the book about. And there's 4 levels of strategy. One is the vision, and that's like the company vision of where you want to go. So where are we going to go? What do we want to be in 5 to 10 years? What's the purpose? And it's not just like, be the best bank there is. Cool, right? You're like, what does that mean? If you're just going to be the best bank, are you going to be the best consumer bank? Are you going to target millennials? How are you going to differentiate, right? Like, what's the differentiation? What are you going to be? What is that difference? So that gets set by senior leadership. And that's what they should be focusing on, long-term, long horizon time span of where we're going to go. Then they set what is called strategic intents. So they look at that vision and they go, based on where we are right now with our company, what are the most important business challenges we can solve to get there? And they set these high-level things. So it's stuff that goes back to revenue targets and cost measures and trying to manage it at the top, right? Not the little details. So should we enter new markets? Should we expand globally? Should we target like a different subset with the current product that we have, right? This is broad strategic stuff up here. And that gets set by senior leadership with input from technology leadership, everybody across that C-suite. This is not just like the CEO dictating this stuff. And then once we have that as product teams, as technology teams, we look at that and we go, okay, what can we do with our product portfolio to reach that? Should we retire one of our products? Should we build new features? Should we enhance one? Should we target one for a different market? This is the type of things that we look at. What are our products and how do we improve them? And then that's up to us to figure out. They're not dictating solutions from the top. It's for us to bubble up. What's our roadmap? Where are we going to go for this? And then teams can then figure out what are the actual solutions or the features that we want to put out there to reach those big targets, those big goals in the product initiative. So product initiatives should be focused on problems we want to solve, right? Really big problems for different markets and different people. And then the options are where we test and learn about the solutions. So when we do this, you should be able to go into any company, right, and start from a team, any team, and say, why are you building what you're building? And they should give you an answer, and you should be able to go to the next person up and say, why are they building what they're building? And see if it matches, right, all the way up to the CEO. And that's how you can tell if you have great product strategy alignment. So what does that actually look like in practice? So we went back to our CTO at that company, and when he said, what is your product strategy? We did not build an entire content system. We said, no, we're going to try to figure out what we're going to do to align here. So we had our ingredients and recipes shipped to your door, right? That's what our product was. So we started to go back and fill in what the strategy was. So we met with the senior leadership team. We said, how do you want to differentiate? There's tons of meal kit deliveries out there. What's our vision? What do we want to go after? And they said that we want to be the most convenient one. So that means that whether you're at a grocery store or you're sitting at home, like we can get you what you need with this meal kit delivery. You can get it where you need it. And then also, we want the most choices. So like Blue Apron has like 4 choices that you can actually choose from. This one was like, we want premium products, we want more choices, we want to be those types of companies. And we said, okay, great. So this is how we're going to differentiate ourselves in the market. This is where we're going. We had a very clear strategic intent that was to double acquisition and maintain retention by the end of 2016. So that's what we were going after. Now my team had to figure out what to do. So the product leaders are supposed to provide vision, goals, and guardrails. That's why they're there, right? So the vision, the goals, and the guardrails. And then the teams need to figure out what it is that they need to do to get that done, right? To reach that vision and those goals. And what this does is promotes alignment, right? So like I talked about, from the person on the bottom all the way up to the top, you should be able to align your strategy up and down horizontally and make sure everybody's moving in the same direction. But that doesn't frequently happen. A lot of times I will go into companies and we'll have all these teams running around saying they gotta ship stuff. And you're like, but why, right? What are you shipping to? What's the goal? You're all going in motion, you're all running. I'm hearing all this urgency. But why? Tell me what the goal is. What are we shipping towards, right? And that's the habit that we end up in. So to escape the build trap, you need to drive high alignment through a good strategy framework that allows teams to make decisions, right? So you want to push the decision making down to the teams. You don't want it to all come up at the top, but you need to have a framework and a strategy in order to do that. I hear tons of leaders in Agile transformation say, I want this to be bottom up. I want everybody to come with me with ideas. But if you don't do the work as a leader to set this framework, nobody will be able to come with all the ideas. Or they'll come with ideas you don't want to hear, right? And they get shot down. So as a leader, this is the most important thing you could possibly do is set the strategy framework. Help them figure out what to do. So once we have that framework, your actual product strategy, what are we going to build, those features, that emerges from experimentation. All of this emerges from experimentation and from data. So the next piece that we need after this is process. So we need a process that allows us to really navigate the uncertainty and figure out what to build. So when I came into that meal kit delivery company, we had lots of ideas. They did not hurt for ideas. So some of them were like, okay, our price is too high. We're the most expensive in the market. That's why people are not buying us. We should lower it. And that was hard because of business reasons. The way we chose to do all the manufacturing, what we had for the products, the quality of the food that we were able to offer, right? If we just lower the prices, we might not be able to stay in business. I had a head of marketing that was like, we should be offering sign-up gifts. That's why people are not signing up. So I want you to go build something where I can put a chef's knife into everybody's box that signs up. And I was like, that sounds dangerous. I don't know if we should be putting knives in people's boxes. Like, maybe let's take a step back. And then we had somebody who was the head of design that was always saying, like, oh, it's just a rebrand, right? Like, we got to just rebrand it, or we got to do different designs. That's why people are not signing up. Like, some of the site is different. And then another one that I hear a lot with e-commerce stuff is like, they can't try it for free, right? We gave free trials, let's do that. But these were costly things. And the problem with all of these ideas are they're not bad ideas. It's just that they're all solution focused. And we did not understand what the problem was. We had no idea why we had an acquisition problem. And that was the biggest part of this. So we took a step back and we started measuring things. So we started at the front of the funnel and we found that people were coming to the site. We got tons and tons of interest. So the front of the funnel marketing was working really, really well. And then they would get in, they'd be on the site looking around, and they start to sign up. So they start to flow, and then all of a sudden they were dropping off at this address step. And I was like, why the address step and not the credit card step? This is before they got to payment. So they saw how much it cost, they had to put in their address, and then they dropped off completely. And I was like, this is so weird. Why would that happen? So we started to investigate. But we were able to stop and say, okay, so we have a conversion problem, right? We have people here. It's not an awareness problem. It's not that people aren't interested. We have a conversion problem. So we narrowed down our field on the strategy canvas to this. And we said that in order to reach our challenge, we need to increase conversion across all platforms by X%. Currently, it was Y%, by the end of Q2. But then we had to ask the question, how, right? How do we do that? How do we actually increase the conversion? So we had an obstacle to face. We knew that people were falling off on that page, but we didn't know why. And we had a really hard time getting in touch with them. We didn't have their email addresses. We didn't have any way to contact them. So how are we going to learn? We were racking our brain with this for a while. And our developer came up to me and said, hey, Melissa, I've been researching. I found this thing called Qualaroo. It takes me 3 seconds to put JavaScript on their site. And what will happen is as people start to leave, it'll slide up and ask people what's stopping them from signing up today. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But I don't know about this open text field. Maybe we should do radio buttons. It might. And he was like, it takes like 2 seconds to change this. Let's just put it up. I was like, okay, you're right. Put it up. In 1 week, we had 2,000 responses. And nobody said that they wanted a chef's knife. Most of the people could not find the menu for the food that we were selling. 33% were like, I'm stuck. I went into this page because there was no information anywhere else, hoping that I would figure out what the menu was, and it's not here. And that is why I dropped off. Right? Some people were saying that they didn't understand how it worked. So like, do you give me pre-portioned food? Do I have to buy salt? Do I have to buy an egg? Like, how does this actually work? I've never done it before. Other people were saying the price was too high, but the way they phrased it was, why do you cost more than competitors? I don't understand. So it was a value proposition problem, right? Not necessarily what the price was. So now that we understand why people are falling off, we could start to narrow down our obstacle. We said people can't find the menu. So what can we do to help people find the menu? So we started to investigate where did things live. And we knew we had a menu on the site. We did a bunch of work on it to show like historical menus and future menus, all that stuff. Why can't they find it? So we looked back at the site, and it was because of this, the dreaded hamburger button. So when they redesigned this entire site, they did a big rebrand. It took them like a year to do this big rebrand. When they redid the site, it was all about very clean, sophisticated design. And what they did is they bunched the entire navigation up into that and turned it into a long scroll. But the menu button was in there, and only 3% of people actually clicked on that. So nobody could find it. So we started to run a test. I said, okay, let's test this. Let's see if we break out that and put menus right up in front and center, if it will start to drive conversions. And there was a big debate because we didn't have a lot of pages on the site. It was just one long scroll, so what else are we going to link to? So we linked to FAQs and help, which were not beautiful sites. They were on the Zendesk, but it was just something. And we A/B tested this, and what we found is that conversions skyrocketed as soon as we put that out there. People were able to come in, find what they want, order it, and get into it. So we knew now that we were on the right path. So we took a step back. We figured out that we had to redesign the entire front end of the site, give more information, and we started to put it out piece by piece so that we had all the information people were looking for that they said they needed on there. And with that, they surpassed doubling conversion rate and acquisition. They got all their goals. They were able to do a very nice exit, sell themselves to a grocery store, and exit the market, which is very competitive these days. So our strategy, right, started to show options, right? We did a bunch of different things to help get to that double conversion rate. One of it was a clear experience for our users. We also did family plans. We saw in that survey, people said, I want different portions of meals. So we introduced that. And piece by piece, the teams came up with the solutions of what we could do to actually reach our goals. And that's how they were successful. So to escape the build trap, we need to use the right processes and tools at the right time, right? We need to make sure that we're not just going and speccing everything and jumping into solution mode before we understand what the problem is. And a lot of times we get caught up in really, really trendy tools. You know, we're like, prototype all the things. I was coaching a very large team of product managers, and I had somebody come in to me once and say, he was just learning product management, it's not his fault, but he came in and he's like, I'm going to build 26 prototypes and show them to all our doctors. And I was like, why? Like, why 26? And he's like, well, they're just going to tell me all the different pieces, right, that they want, and then I'm going to put it into one prototype. And I'm like, okay, what problem are you solving, right? Like, what's the problem that you're solving? He's like, oh, I don't know yet. Like, I just know they don't like this screen. Okay, stop. Go use user research first. Let's build 2 prototypes and test those, right, instead. So we latch onto these tools. We latch onto these concepts, right, like design sprinting. Design sprint all the things is another one I hear. Like, as long as we do design sprints for everything, we'll be fine. And we get caught up in all these different ways of working, but we don't stop to think about, is this the right tool for the situation that I'm in? So we have to remember that tools are useless unless you use them correctly, right? It doesn't matter what the tool is. You just have to make sure that it's going to solve the problem you're actually trying to solve. So what we do with our product managers is we teach them something that I call the Product Kata. And this is based off Toyota Kata. Anybody know Toyota Kata? Yes. So based off Toyota Kata with Mike Rother, about how do you teach people to learn, break down the problem they're trying to solve, and figure out what's the right step to get there. So we start with our company goal in that strategy framework, right? So this can happen on multiple levels. Leaders should be doing this to set challenges. Teams should be doing this to set options. So where am I right now? What's the current state? What's the goal we're trying to get to? And then we go, okay, what's the first little step that we're trying to do to get to that goal? How do we break it down into a smaller problem? So that's how we broke down conversion rate. And then what tool is going to help me learn next? So what do I need to learn? In that meal kit delivery company, it was, why are people not signing up? And then what's the tool I can apply? What's one small experiment I can run to go learn that, and then come back and refine it and iterate through this? So what this does is it gives people a moment to take a step back and figure out, where am I and where do I need to go? So at the end of the day, this focuses on learning. And learning is a thing that reduces uncertainty. And when you have high uncertainty in a company, you have risk. You have risk that you're building the wrong thing. You have risk that you're going to put stuff out there that your customers don't want. And even though you may have a lot of people in the company to work on it, right? Sometimes we have 45,000 people in our companies. That doesn't mean there's less risk in building the wrong thing. Because what are your competitors doing while you're building the wrong thing, right? There's tons of opportunity risk associated with shipping the wrong stuff. So we need to build into all of our processes this discovery and delivery pattern constantly, right? We should be constantly going, how do I discover? How do I deliver? And in some phases where there's high uncertainty, we're going to have a lot more discovery. And then when there's lower uncertainty, it's going to be smaller learning cycles, right? So you need to have the appropriate amount for the stage that you're in. In order to do that, though, we need to build organizations that respect that discovery and delivery, respect getting that information back to users. So let's go back to our lovely quote, right? So what happens? Why don't we have organizations that do this really, really well all over the place, right? It makes logical sense. So a lot of times, we're getting frustrated with Agile and Scrum because organizations purchase them for the wrong reasons. They think that if I can just make people's fingers go faster, we will make value. And that's why a lot of executives start to buy Scrum. They say it's going to be the thing that gets us to ship faster and do that. And there's lots of great things in Agile, but sometimes we buy them from the wrong reason. And what happens is our organizations just end up being like a pipeline of throwing things out there. And we start judging the output as success, right? And to me, this never really made sense for Agile, because when you look at Agile, the first principle of the Agile Manifesto is our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So what happened to the customer in some of our processes? What happened to the customer in the values that we took into these organizations? I think that's what we need to get back to. So in order to get out of the build trap, right, we need to create a product-led organization that has policies and practices needed to navigate that uncertainty and make strategic decisions in service of our customers, in service of delivering value back out to those organizations. So one way that we do that with a lot of organizations is to implement something that we call product operations. So new buzzword that's going on out there. Everybody's like, what is this product operations? With product operations, the biggest thing I hear from product managers and from leaders, literally from the C-suite, when I go into organizations is, I do not have the data I need to make strategic decisions. Everything you're saying is great. I cannot access the data. I either have to put out requests and get it back like in 40 days, and by then I couldn't make a decision, or I don't have it readily available, so I'm just gonna go into yearly budgeting and planning and just write down whatever I think because I don't have time to go pull all this stuff together. So a lot of stuff that we do with companies now is trying to implement a product operations division that helps scale good product management throughout the organization. And that really looks at 3 different parts. One is business and data insights. So that's gathering and aggregating all of the insights inside the company and the data to make strategic decisions. So that could be at the C-suite, helping them try to answer great questions, or down at the teams, getting the data about what their users are doing. The next one is streamlining your customer and market insights. So as we scale in organizations, a big fear I hear from leaders that I work with is that everybody's gonna go bother all the customers. We've got 500 product managers. I can't just turn them loose on the customers. Like, they'll go bother them. So what we do is we implement policies and databases and stuff, and I'll show you, about how to really be able to control that, make sure that product managers can talk to customers, but keep some systems around it so that it's not just a free-for-all. And then also get a market research division going in to help you figure out where's the value of the opportunity. And then lastly, is a lot of where the product coaching, the agile coaching, all these things fall, which is the policies and the practices of what we're gonna do. So what are our process, what's our practices, how do we work the way that we wanna work? And how do we make sure that stuff is in service to us scaling? So with the business data and insights piece, you need to be able to ask a lot of questions and answer a lot of questions quickly. So we always show this to leaders and say, can you answer this question? Which products and segments are the most profitable? Which features are driving sales and adoption by segment? Which customer segments have the best retention? Which products have the most time invested in bug fixes? Which products have the most sales debt? If you can't answer these questions, that means that you need a better look at your data. These things should be top of mind to leaders, right? I can answer all these things, leaders of product lines, CEOs, right? They should be able to go through this and find the answers to these questions quickly because you need it to make investment decisions and strategic decisions about where we should go. So what we do to do that is start to implement these processes of how do we aggregate data from all of our different systems. And we usually have these systems in place, and if we don't, we're slowly putting them into companies. But how do we pull all that information into systems, into these dashboards? So we use things like Tableau or other BI tools to pull the visualization together so that you can look at it and say like, oh, I know exactly which products are doing well, I know which ones are funded correctly, or I need to make adjustments, right? So you've got your user engagement metrics, you've got your customer support data, you've got your JIRAs with your workflow data. All these things are in service to each other, helping you slice and dice the data so that you can make decisions. So our product operations data and insights becomes a virtuous cycle, right? We get executive visibility. I came into a company to lead a product transformation of 350 product managers with a chief product officer. And the number one complaint for the CPO and the CEO was, I can't have visibility, or I don't have visibility into what is happening today. Like, I don't actually know what the teams are working on, and I don't know how they relate up because they're at too low of a level in JIRA. I don't want to go look at user stories, like bubble it up for me. And they shouldn't be in JIRA, but they were going in there because they couldn't find the information they need. This happens over and over and over and over again. So this type of stuff gives you executive visibility, It allows you to do strategy deployment well then, so all of the stuff we talked about. It gives your team efficiency because now they don't have to answer all those questions. They know where to go. Everybody's going on the right direction. And then you get operational predictability because you can start to see what's happening so you can make choices about which way you want to go. The next piece is really market insights and customer insights. So with this, when people say, oh, I don't want people talking to all the different customers, at that same company, we built a product operations team. And we also built a database of all the customers that we asked if they would like to opt into experimentation or customer research or all those things. Put them in a database, and we tagged what they were comfortable with and how often you could talk to them. And anybody who talked to them had to update the database. Sales would come in and say, don't talk to them. We're having a bad contract there. So now we get some visibility into who can we contact, how do we contact them, what are they up for? And we can start to actually let people go out and do the customer research. Only trained people. I'm not talking about anybody could go out there, but trained people to do that can now coordinate, and we have a system. We also put all the insights everybody learned back into that system. So once you did user research, you had to put it in the system so that everybody could search and figure out what else you talked about, get those insights too. We had research tools set up, right? We need a standardized way of how we do surveys, of how we do different things there. We had sales and support feedback mechanisms. A lot of times, sales and support have really good information, but it doesn't make it back to the team, or it makes it back into the team as go build this feature, and no context around it. So we put things in place that they would go and start to put details about it and why they wanted it and start to do some of that research. And then market research as well, and subscriptions. So how do we go out there, figure out what other people are doing? So this is really what we built up to enable product managers to do this. This product operations team is not doing this for them. They're enabling the product managers, the product owners, the teams themselves, the UX researchers, everybody to go do their jobs better. That's the point of this team. And then lastly, it's like, how do we start to standardize our ways of working? It was interesting. I had a conversation with my friend the other day, and we were just talking about this. I said, as you scale these teams, right, you get 350 Scrum teams. If everybody makes a roadmap differently, how do you bubble that up in an organization? And he was saying, well, I think teams should really control their own processes. And I do believe that at a certain level. But as you scale, you have to put in some standardization around key things. What that means for your company may be different for other companies. But what I've seen is things like roadmaps, right? Standardizing how we make roadmaps so that we can put them all together and look at them. Standardizing things like strategy reviews. Like we all get together and review roadmaps on this day. This is how we do it. Here's the format, right? Ways that we do like experiment findings. How do we communicate them out to people? How do we communicate it to other people? Product briefs and vision statements. And the purpose of this too is when you start to standardize these different tools, people can start to go from team to team, and they don't have to learn an entirely new way of working either. So you're allowing people to move around. You're giving them the ability to dive in and start to get to work really fast and not have to reinvent the wheel. So we don't want to standardize everything, but we do want to standardize some things. And it is important that we standardize some of the product management tools that we use. And that's because product is really this weird role that touches everything. And a lot of these tools, roadmaps, right, strategy reviews, they don't just impact technology. They impact sales. They impact marketing. They impact financials. So it becomes this really big, important role that we have to take into account data from everywhere. We should be looking at win-loss from sales. We should be looking at technology implications. We should be looking at tech debt. We should be looking at financials of how to run this. And you have to as a great product manager. And as you go up the line, right, you need to make sure that you have somebody who's capable of doing that across the organization. And that's why we've been introducing this concept, and you're seeing it catch on a lot more, of a chief product officer. Anybody have a chief product officer in their company? Yes. All right, I'll take it. Couple hands. So the chief product officer's job, right, is to make sure that the whole product portfolio is running smoothly, right? It's to build up the product operations across the company. It's to do the strategy review at the highest levels and represent product at the board level, but also the C-suite level to make sure that we have a seat at the table. I have placed about 5 to 6 chief product officers in the last year in the companies that we've worked with, and they've seen phenomenal results. But you're going to start to see this be more and more important, having leadership levels. Not every company needs a CPO. I will say that too. The last time I talked about this at an Agile conference, people were like, I don't know if we need a CPO. But you do need a senior product leader somewhere. Sometimes in smaller companies, that's a VP of product. Totally cool. In really larger organizations, you need somebody to go across all the portfolio and start to help bring it together. Otherwise, you make bad strategic decisions. So, great product organizations really are growing through software products rather than just people services, right? So when we think about a product organization, we're talking about standardizing software to put out there. Services are good, but they surround the product, right? They surround it to help enhance it, or products enable services to get out there. They are ruthlessly focused on solving customer and user problems to drive business value. They're oriented around outcomes instead of outputs, so the value that we're actually producing. They're experimental by nature and driven by continuous improvement. And they're a place where leadership enables empowered decision-making throughout all levels. So that's what good product organizations look like. And not everything out there is a product organization. You may have products at a service organization. That's totally fine. But your approach to how you build those products, how you get them out there, should be similar, right? You just may have a different strategy, a different business strategy. But when we look at good product organizations, they have all these characteristics, and they're all working in service of each other. So we have to remember that to build these things, we need that organizational framework. We need operations to help us scale. We need good organizational structure. We need good leadership at the top. We also need a strategy that enables people to make those decisions. We need to push decision-making down at the feature level. And as leaders, only worry about what we need to set at the top. The most important thing a leader could do is make that strategy framework, because that helps the rest of the business run. And then we need a process to really experiment towards what is that strategy that we should be building? What are those features that we should release to customers? But at the end of the day, it really does all come down to people. We need people with an open mindset as product managers to say, I don't know, let me go find out, right? Let me go ask questions, let me get the data, let me do the research, let me figure out what it is that we should be building. And we need good product managers, and we need good product leadership at all levels to help enable that. Because it's really easy to stay in the build trap. It's super comfortable. But it's up to every single one of us to figure out how to get out. So thank you very much.